So, Mr. Brown, thank you for coming in. Just wanted to first ask if you could maybe please introduce yourself and just kind of give a brief summary of what your position is. That's a good way of putting it.
All right. My name is Melissa Brown. I am a former Killeen City Councilwoman, and currently I am a community advocate. So I have made it my mission to stay very involved with the community, know what's going on, and get the word out to everybody, make sure that the citizens are aware. I know your paper does a good job of trying to do that, but not everyone gets the newspaper, not everyone watches the news, especially in the streaming age. So the one thing everyone does still do is go to social media. And I make a point of trying to make sure all the meetings are covered on social media, as many as I can get to, events, and then just strongly advocate for those purposes in the community that I feel strongly about.
Okay, that's fair. Can you explain what your history is with KHA and what you're trying to do with it now? Like, I understand that you do some volunteering at the Moss Rose Community Center, or did. Yeah. Yeah.
So I have been volunteering with Killeen Housing Authority, especially at the Moss Rose Center, since 2019. Up until they were closed in November, they have, not October, they have provided meals every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday for the homeless, the less fortunate, and the people who live at Highview and Hyde Estates. They have had multiple community events, block parties, informational resource days. They've had the community baby showers that Aware Central Texas holds, have been hosted there before. It's really just a place where it is just what it sounds like. It is a community center. And then in September, prior to September, really back over the summer, Janice Taylor, who has some visual limitations, started needing assistance because the board of directors had told her that she would have to be responsible for being the receptionist, even remotely. So she was answering all of the phone calls. They were all being routed to her cell phone. She had a lot of the emails, just general questions coming to her. And so because of those visual impairments, I was helping her with the text messages that were coming in from clients and landlords, and then with the emails that were coming in from clients and landlords. Right now, I am still actively involved with at least trying to help the Killeen Housing Authority and the people that Killeen Housing Authority is supposed to be assisting. So all of their clients, all of their tenants, and then their vendors, their landlords, and the homeless. Because whether it was directly Killeen Housing Authority and their mission or not, for the past 24 years, Moss Rose Community Center has been there to help the homeless also. And that resource isn't available to them right now, so I'm trying to work as hard as I can to make sure that that's reopened.
Mm. Okay, that's fair. Okay, now veering off to what happened at the last council meeting. Full disclosure, I witnessed at least the beginning of it.
Yes.
So could you maybe tell me in your own words what kind of happened there?
So it got a little blurred because it happened very quickly. So I'm going to start with that. But my husband arrived at the city council meeting once he noticed that Mr. Whiteside was present and had gotten up to speak. So he came to the city council meeting at that point because he was concerned about me and my safety, personally, physically. Mr. Whiteside and I have had a bit of a rocky history so far. I think is the nicest way that we can put it, right? And during the recess that was called, Mr. Whiteside was outside talking to you, and my husband went outside. He sat down. He actually intended on talking to one of the other citizens that was out there. And in the course of it, my husband made some comments to Mr. Whiteside. I don't know what he said at first. I know I did hear him say, "Isn't that right, Mr. Whiteside?" Mr. Whiteside looked at him and said, "What did you say?" And my husband said, "Keep my wife's name out of your mouth." At that point, Mr. Whiteside started approaching the bench where my husband and I were both seated and threw his bag down onto the bench and started getting very loud back and very aggressive. That's the point where both men were standing up. I was kind of in the middle of them. When I realized that it was getting a little more heated and it was moving more towards the potential of someone taking a physical swing, yeah, I did turn to my husband and tell him, honey, I think it's time for you to leave, which he did. And I have to say that, well, I appreciate that my husband came out to defend me and protect me and make sure that I was okay. And he did make the first comment. He didn't step forward. He didn't try to become physically aggressive. And when it got to that point, my husband is a 100% disabled veteran with PTSD, has the propensity to be able to just snap in a situation like that. He has grown enough personally and emotionally to know when he's getting to that point, and he made the decision to be the adult in the situation and leave. But every time he tried to take a step backward toward the car, Mr. Whiteside took another step forward, advancing toward him. Fortunately, it didn't come to blows. All it was a very loud argument between two men who were in their emotions. I know Mr. Whiteside says that he has filed charges. I know that KDH has asked me if my husband or I intend to file charges, and he and I have talked about it. I think that the best way to describe it is because of the situation, the fact that it was just an argument. No one even raised their hand, no one took a swing, no one moved in and got that close within each other's personal spaces. I don't think that it's appropriate, and my husband kind of agrees, to bring charges against someone that may or may not stick, but regardless, why try to tarnish someone's reputation with a criminal claim against them over an argument?
And when you spoke to the police, did you say exactly that?
Well, I hadn't talked to my husband about, what happened regarding our discussion afterwards, of course. But yes, I did tell them. I was very honest and candid about it. And my husband and I came out and sat down. That my husband made the first comment, and that he told Mr. Whiteside to keep my wife's name out of your mouth. I was even candid about the fact that my husband said it'll be good for your health, and that Mr. Whiteside then became very aggressive and tried to move in as if he was going to physically start a fight with someone who was sitting down.
But he did also get up at one point, didn't he?
He got up after Mr. Whiteside threw his stuff down and moved in, and physically his body language said he was getting ready to fight. He stood up taller, put his shoulders back, puffed his chest out, and started getting louder and more aggressive.
Yeah, because I did see Mr. Whiteside kind of throw his bag onto the bench prior to that, but then I also saw your husband get up shortly after that point. So, alright, well, and that's about the last that
Well, you also have to remember, where my husband's concerned, I was standing in the middle of the two men.
Yeah.
And so my husband was also concerned that if he continued to move forward, he was going to come right through me. He didn't look like he cared that I was standing there. Mr. Whiteside was fixated on my husband, and at that point I really thought that he was going to just continue to move forward and just go straight through me, or kind of push me out of the way, or whatever, swing over my head. I'm short. Both of those men are over 6 feet tall.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like you said, he did actually speak at the council meeting, but he didn't. The interesting thing is, he didn't actually mention you by name, though. I mean, I guess for people who know the situation, it was kind of clear, but he didn't actually specifically say it's Melissa Brown who was like. But you did during the meeting say that it was you, right? I mean.
No, at first I said that's not on the agenda, because the mayor had been very insistent that no one could stray a sentence off of the agenda. And then the second time, when he alluded to me and said that this is all for political purposes and someone's making it all about politics, I said, and who is that?
Oh,
And he said, I'm not going to name any names.
okay.
But he said a former councilwoman, and at least 3 or 4 times prior to that, he had said my name to the Killeen Daily Herald.
Right, yeah. Yeah, gotcha. Can I just see? Can I just ask you, putting all of, like, that stuff aside, like everything that happened afterwards, like what is the issue with Mr. Whiteside as a commissioner? Like, what has he done? I mean, is it like personality? Is it just something he's doing? Do you think maybe he's like incompetent in some way? Like, what is like the major issue with him?
So let's go back to the first meeting he was at. If I remember correctly, that was October 9th. He was sworn in on October 3rd. I believe the very first meeting was the 9th or the 12th. It was somewhere within that 1 or 2 week span.
Mm-hmm.
You were at that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Several other media outlets were there. That was a meeting where, actually that one went very calmly. There was no speaking at that one. The mayor showed up. They went into closed session, and even in closed session, whatever they were discussing while they were in there, Mr. Whiteside got very loud several times. So if you were still waiting in that lobby area, you could actually hear him yelling at his fellow commissioners. So that was a little off-putting to me that he was being so aggressive in that small room, but it had nothing to do with me. I'm not on the board, I'm not on that commission. I wasn't in the room. It was the next meeting where I was standing in the very back of the room. Every single person in the audience had their back to me. Mr. Whiteside was talking, I was sitting in the back, and I was doing this. I was shaking my head in disagreement with him. And Mr. Whiteside is the one who initially said, I see that Mrs. Brown is back there shaking her head, but, and continued to go on implying that I don't know what I'm talking about.
Mm.
I had never even spoken one-on-one with Mr. Whiteside before that. I don't know him. I don't know if I like him or don't like him. I know I don't like his behavior to this point. I know that I don't like the fact that every single time we've been in the room together, he has had something negative to say about me, whether he says my name or not. When you turn around and you look at a person as you're saying something, if I were to say, well, you know, I know this reporter over at Killeen Daily Herald, and I turn my head to look towards you, is the implication that I'm talking about you?
Mm.
And it has been like that every single instance he has come to your publication. He has told blatant lies about me and told you himself, I can't prove it. I don't have any evidence. I understand I'm a public figure and people are going to say stuff about me. Let's argue about my policies. Let's argue about my positions on things. I don't care. Let's even argue about or discuss what it is that I do at the meetings that you don't like. Is it the things I say, the tone of voice that I use, the fact that I will call out when I see something unjust happening? Ask me about any of that. We'll talk about that. But he is making it personal when he brings up lies. Blatant lies that he cannot defend, that he cannot prove anything to you for.
Right, yeah.
That's where my issue lies. I don't know him well enough to know anything about him, you know. Yes, I had those, I think, 4 or 5 exchanges with a cousin of his. I want to set the record clear on that. Has been a friend of mine on Facebook for at least 6 years now. I didn't go to his page and find people and just start messaging them.
Mm.
I recognized the name. I was trying to figure out who this person was, especially after I heard all of the yelling at that very first meeting. And she indicated that she is his cousin.
Okay. Yeah, that was actually going to be like one of my questions, so I'm glad that you brought it up yourself. But I mean, but ultimately, like, he did find out about it, and you had indicated to her that you did not want, you know, you didn't want him to know. So, like,
For exactly this reason.
Yeah,
for the way he came at me so aggressively about it, the way that he called me a Facebook stalker,
right.
the way that he has made other accusations and allegations against me that I feel are a retaliation for just trying to figure out who this person is.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to just make clear, or at least if it's not clear, to at least try to understand, is that your issue with Whiteside is not so much that he's done anything bad as a commissioner per se. It's more of like what you perceive to be his behavior towards you and others.
And other women, yeah. Well, it's not just that. I feel like Mr. Whiteside has taken his personal feelings about me now. And he has allowed that to affect his decisions as a commissioner.
Yeah.
When he openly says at board meetings and when he openly says to the media that, you know, no, this is personal now, because he has said that. I believe it was actually one of the quotes in one of your articles that you wrote. If not, it's on recording from the board meeting where he said it. But it is definitely documented. And he is trying to keep the one center that has been consistently there for almost 2.5 decades now closed because he doesn't, apparently, I don't know, he doesn't like me or he doesn't like me politically, but he's making lies to try to make sure that it stays closed. He made the initial motion. If you remember from that meeting, he made the motion to say that as soon as there's any insurance on the building for Moss Rose, it can reopen. It didn't even have to wait until the next meeting. Because that was a big back and forth between he and I at that meeting when that happened.
Yeah.
And then he came back and said, no, that's not going to work. And then accused another organization of having ulterior motives, as if the only reason they're trying to help is to help me in some political aspiration, which I will tell you that there is no way that that building would ever be allowed to be used for political purposes, because it does belong to a 501c3.
Right, yeah.
But we're punishing, he, through his fighting and arguing to keep it closed or delay the opening of it, he is punishing the people that is intended to help. The people who are out there who are freezing. It was 37 degrees last night without the wind chill. And misting. Couldn't open up the building then. Couldn't even bring them in to give them a hot meal in the morning or at night or something.
Yeah. Well, as far as like you're referring to LULAC, Whiteside actually but he clarified what he said, but he also kind of redirected it toward you and one of the other commissioners, Gabriel Montalvo. Gabriel Montalvo also says that that's not the case, and we've reported and haven't seen any evidence of that actually happening. But have you spoken with Gabriel Montalvo? Do you have much interaction with him?
No. Have I spoken with him? Yes. I've actually made it a point to try to speak with all of those commissioners to get an idea where they're coming from and what their plans are for the future of the Housing Authority, and in particular Moss Rose.
Right.
Do I talk to Montalvo on a regular basis? No. I've met him 2 or 3 times before he came on the board, and that was at social functions or functions where he was running for council and I wanted to see what he was about. Nothing to do with any of this. Yeah, so there's not some big conspiracy where he and I are working together that we've planned or plotted anything. LULAC, of course, and we'll go back to that because, and I'm going to sound harsh, but like you told me earlier, it's not much that anybody wouldn't expect from me because I'm just honest about things, right? So let's go back to that first time when he clarified it. He lied. He blatantly lied. In your article, and in his interview, it said, at the meeting they had on that Monday, he adamantly denied ever saying those words to anyone from LULAC. He said, I never said those words. I never said anyone had any other motives. And then he came in, he did the interview with you, and he said, oh, well, I told her that, but she misunderstood me. So why couldn't he have just said that at the meeting?
Well, from my recollection, he did, but he did also say it the way you said it, but he also, at the same meeting...
He said, I'm sorry if you misunderstood me. He never said that he did say those words. He said, I never said those words. I'm sorry if you misunderstood me. I'm sorry if you were offended because you misunderstood me.
Alright. Well...
Go back and watch the video. It's on my Facebook.
Okay. Well, I have to ask you this because we've been hearing some things from the mayor and the city manager, and that staff have been like harassed at meetings, and your name did come up as well as Mr. Sean Price. And your husband, and I just want to know if there was...
My husband is accused of harassing staff, along with Sean Price and myself. Where's the evidence? Did you ask for proof, or are they just saying?
It seems like it comes from a staff member.
Where's the proof? Which staff member? Right, so it's okay to just throw out accusations at me. No proof. Nothing to back it up. And because the mayor says it's written in stone, because Mr. Cagle says it's written in stone, they both have their own personal issues with me too. So, no. I have not harassed any staff members. I can't speak to Mr. Price. I don't know him very well. I've seen him, obviously, at the meetings that he's come to. But as far as my husband, he's come to 2 meetings. The first one he came to, he didn't say a word. He just sat there for about 20 minutes, and then he went home. And the second one was on Tuesday last week, where he only talked to one staff member. He talked to the police chief, and they talked about the New York Giants. So unless the police chief is not a Giants fan, I don't see how that's harassing. I have never harassed staff members. Do I ask them questions? Yeah. Do I point out my point of view? Yes. But 95% of the time it's done right there at the podium. So if my asking questions about what's going on in departments is considered harassing, then I think the council needs to do some more of that.
Right.
So how have I been harassing? Give me some examples of how I've harassed them according to these people.
Well, is there any way that it could have been misconstrued or something? Like, I mean...
I'm sure that anything could be misunderstood, and if a staff member feels like I have personally harassed or attacked them, I would greatly appreciate it if they would call me, email me, let me know how they feel, and I will be more than happy to talk to them. It doesn't even have to be one-on-one if I feel like they're being harassed. I will be happy to talk to them and we can work it out and figure out what's going on. But personally, do I feel like I've harassed any staff members? No.
Alright. Alright, that's fair. I mean, I can just tell you that, during the meeting, the last council meeting, do you feel like there's like a, I don't know, like a kind of like a nasty or like threatening environment at these council meetings that maybe is causing some issues, like, because I mean, I mean, just in the fact that there was like an escalation outside the council door, the city hall door, you know? I mean, do you see that?
What happened outside of the doors had absolutely nothing to do with city council or the meeting. I don't appreciate it being bled into the same thing, because there was nothing, you heard the beginning of that interaction. There was nothing in that argument that had anything to do with city council.
Mm.
It wasn't a city council issue. I have never seen a time where a citizen has, I was on council for 18 months. Never once did I feel threatened by citizens. Never once was I afraid. We had the same people coming. We had the same people talking the same way they do now. But they're words. They are frustrated citizens who are coming up trying to express themselves and getting shut down. So yes, every time they get shut down, every time they feel like they're not allowed to express themselves, they come back a little bit more frustrated the next time. I think that this escalation is two-sided. You know, you've got the citizens who are frustrated, and then you turn around and you've got really the mayor, because she's the one who controls what happens during the meetings, who refuses to allow citizens to speak. You saw what she did on Tuesday. It wasn't just to me, it was to other people. Where whenever she doesn't want to hear something, she'll bang the gavel, she'll interrupt, she'll tell people they need to stop. She'll count down the number of minutes and seconds they have left while the person is talking. And that causes frustration. And while I chose to deal with it a different way, yes, a couple people did choose to get a little bit louder. I can't control what those people do, but do I feel like there is a threat to the council or to the staff because of it? Absolutely not.
Hmm. Okay.
Did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you about the lawsuit with Councilman Ramon Alvarez. I just want to know if there was like a status update or something new that has happened since then.
So first of all, it wasn't a lawsuit against Councilman Alvarez. I'll clarify again that I was contesting the outcome of the election and the way that it was operated. According to the state law, the only way I could do that was to name at least one other candidate who actually won a seat. Because of the vote difference, it only made sense for Mr. Alvarez to be the named person.
Mm-hmm.
There would not have been enough vote difference anywhere for me to have caught up with the other two candidates who won seats. So, I want to clarify that. I never sued Mr. Alvarez. Secondly, y'all know the result of that, what the judge ordered. You know that I had intended to appeal. I never got the paperwork that I needed from the court to file that in a timely manner. And instead of continuing to pursue it, I had said I'm going to walk away from it. Mr. Alvarez is the councilman. And I'm not going to continue to fight it. I succeeded in what I wanted to do, which was making sure that the elections were fixed. You said yourself, Bell County was very happy that this election went much better than prior ones. Because a lot of those issues that I brought up during that whole case have been corrected now because it was brought to light. So the only issue I have with Mr. Alvarez now, I've talked to him about it personally, is that he has an unlawful abstract of judgment against my house. Because it's my homestead and the law says you can't put an abstract of judgment on a homestead property. I've emailed him about it, I've talked to him about it personally. I will email him again. I'm trying to not take him to court over it because it seems like such a silly thing. It's so easy for him to fix. And as a realtor, he knows the implications of having that there. Otherwise, I have no problems with Mr. Alvarez. I never have. It's never been personal. I've never disliked Mr. Alvarez. We've been very cordial throughout the whole case. We've been very cordial with each other since then. We've had hours-long conversations in the parking lot at City Hall. So, I don't know what else you'd like to know about that other than, as far as I'm concerned, it's water under the bridge.
Yeah, that's fair. That's all the questions I have, but I don't know if there's something that maybe you wanted to say or like express that maybe like I didn't ask about, that, you know, the
Sure.
opportunity.
There are a couple of things. First, I want to say, as far as Mr. Whiteside and Mr. Hartsfield are concerned, I really do feel bad for them. They got thrown into the middle of a storm. I almost forgot we have to post this. They got thrown into the middle of a storm that they didn't know what they were walking into, what to expect. And they're just trying to, no history with being on a board like this, and they're doing on-the-job learning, and as they're doing this on-the-job learning, more and more stuff keeps coming their way. So in that regard, I really do empathize with them. I know as a council member, it's kind of the same way. You get on the council, and even in that, where it's public, and I've followed it for years religiously, when I got on the council, there was stuff that came up that just surprised the hell out of me. Things that I hadn't expected, things that were brand new, and it would happen regularly. You weren't here, but I'm sure that Mr. Brooks will remember the surprise that the council got with the last time we had an assistant city manager position. So there are things that happen behind the scenes all the time that board members, council members, county commissioners, all the way up, right? You don't know about it because it's just a daily operation thing. You go to the meeting or you get your agenda and all of a sudden you're like, what is this? I feel bad for them because at least other people have had the ability to know what's going on, and they just kind of got thrown into it and had to get that update all at once. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to figure it out. And so I understand why Mr. Whiteside is frustrated himself, right? I would be frustrated if I was in his seat. Which is why I'm hoping that going forward, there can be this understanding that we're both frustrated for different reasons, but I understand the position that they're in and why it would be so angering to them. I don't think that they got proper briefing leading into it. I know that they got a briefing from the mayor before they fully came onto the board. The mayor didn't tell them everything that she knew. I know this. I know that it's saying I have alleged the mayor was more involved. I will send you all of the emails that show that the mayor had all of this information. That the mayor and Mr. Cagle were sitting down in private meetings with Cullen Mills, who is the prior board president, getting updates. So the three of them were having meetings. So the mayor and Mr. Cagle knew what was going on, and she failed to brief her new incoming board members on it. Mr. Mills failed to update the rest of the board. As a matter of fact, it wasn't until when Mrs. Stubbs, Ms. Jackson, and Mr. Montalvo had to outvote Cullen Mills and Phyllis Rosine in order to allow Montalvo as the treasurer to go to bank and get the bank statements, that anybody knew what was going on financially there. Mm. They were surprised. They were shocked. And having to be there to answer phone calls and assist with emails, I can tell you that everybody was learning everything every day. Something new was coming up. New information was being discovered. It was a shock to everyone's system. So these two newest board members, though, didn't even have that lead up from September until October when a lot of that information came in. I do want to put that out there. The only other thing is, there's one question that no one has asked me throughout all of this. No one has asked me why Killeen Housing Authority Moss Rose are so important to me. I think you said you just wanted me to say whatever else, so I don't know if you want me to dig into that. So you can ask if that's what's...
Yeah, you're more than welcome to.
Sure. So the people who, I won't even say benefit from Killeen Housing Authority, people who are in a position to rely on the Killeen Housing Authority are experiencing the same thing that I grew up in that situation. That was my life. I don't know how many people on that housing authority board know what it's like, even as a child, to be afraid that you're going to have to move because you're going to get kicked out of the house. I don't know how many people on the board know what it's like to get their food stamps in the checkbook and their WIC their WIC checks that are printed out, and as a child take your younger sisters and take them shopping, and you go through and you pick everything out that's on that WIC stamp, on that check, and you pick out everything that you can get with those food stamps, and you go up and have to take care of it and pay for it. Or getting the government box of food at the beginning of the month, that, you know, you wake up in the morning and if you want a bowl of cereal, you add water to your powdered milk so you can have that on your cereal. You run out of that, and by the end of the month you're just hoping that there's some other organization willing to give out food boxes before the month is up, because by now you've gone through all of that food. And then you pack up in the middle of the night. Do you know that when in kindergarten I went to 2 different schools, and by the time I was in 6th grade I went to 8 schools? Because we always had to move quickly right before the landlord could put the eviction notice on the door. That way there was no eviction notice or eviction on the record, so that we could still find someplace else to live. We lived in all the areas where no one else wanted to go to, because those were the areas that we could afford. The people that are affected and rely on KHA, that is the life that I grew up in all the way up until I was 13 and I went into foster care, and then I was just a poor foster child. So I know what it's like to go to school as a kid and be harassed and bullied and picked on because of it. I know what it's like to go to high school and have middle school, your first day of school, everybody knows, oh, that's the new foster kid, because they know the bus stop. I know how much it means to every single one of these clients that they're relying on other people. They're putting their trust and their faith and their hope in these other people to do the right thing, to make sure that they and their family and their children are safe and can still stay in their house. And that didn't happen, and it pisses me off. And you can keep it or you can edit it, I don't care. But it pisses me off that these staff members would intentionally misuse the money they got from HUD, from the government, to make sure that these other people are taken care of, and people are rightfully afraid they're going to be kicked out of their houses. And you have a board now that is more concerned with coming into you every 2 weeks and telling you how much they dislike me and telling you what their problems are with me, instead of talking about these families and these individuals. Instead of saying, well, I went over to the projects and handed out applications. You know what projects is? A term that we used when I grew up there in the 80s and the 90s. We don't call them projects anymore. Those are the housing developments that Killeen Housing Authority operates. They're not the projects. That's demeaning. These are individuals who are trying, who are in a bad situation, and we don't know every one of their personal stories, and it's none of our business, but if you're on that board, compassion, empathy, and caring for the people who need it should be your top priorities. Not worrying about whether someone in the audience has a perceived political intention for something and you happen to not like them for whatever freaking reason. Because like I said, I don't even know Mr. Whiteside like that. I don't know if he and I would like each other if we could be friends eventually. At this point, I can tell you that I hope we could be cordial. I hope we can be cordial and understand that we're going to agree to disagree on stuff, because that's what we have to do as adults and professionals. But also, I hope that him understanding why this is so important to me helps everyone to understand why I speak out the way that I do, especially at the Housing Authority.
Mm-hmm.
And one last thing,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really, really tired of this back and forth. One person gets to speak one day, 3 or 4 days or a week later, the other person gets to speak. So I have a request and a proposal. In the future, going forward, if Mr. Whiteside or the mayor or anyone else feels like they need to rebut anything that I've said, if they have any new accusations or allegations against me, I'd love to set up just a time and a day over at, I would say over at the police station, over in their community conference room. And we all sit down and they bring whatever evidence they have for these accusations they're making. I'll bring you all the evidence that shows that everything I've said to you, I can back up on paper. And we just talk about it like adults, all in one room, all at one time, and we get it dealt with and we move on so that community can be taken care of, so that we're not putting on this 7-act play where it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Let's get down to the business of doing business. And we'll say, and you're going to say something about someone, back it up. I'll bring everything to back it up. That's my request and my proposal.
Okay, most part, thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.